everyone. I think that as everybody gets to their seats, we'll get started just because of the delay that we had due to votes. I call this meeting to order, and I'd like to welcome everyone to meeting number 18 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is continuing its study of creating a fair and equitable Canadian energy transformation. Today is our third meeting with witnesses on this study. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room or remotely using the Zoom application, and it's a delight to have people attending both in person and have audience members joining us as well once again. I'd like to take the opportunity to remind participants that screenshots or taking photos are not allowed when we're in session, and today's proceedings will be televised and made available via the House of Commons website. As per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on March 10th, all those attending the meeting in person must wear a mask except for those who are at the place during the proceedings. And we'd like to make a few comments for the benefits of witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, you need to click on your own microphone to activate your mic, and then please mute when you're not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have a choice at the bottom of your screen of selecting either floor, English, or French. And for those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. And our team will look after turning your microphones on and off. For those joining, or if it's your first time here, speak in a regular conversational tone so that our interpreters can keep up. And all comments should be addressed through the chair. We also try just to speak one at a time. When we get into the questions and answers period, it's very much up to the members to direct who they're going to turn their attention to, and I give them a fair bit of latitude. If we find that you're not getting a chance to answer questions, then I may give you some time at the end of the allocated time for each round. But it's been working pretty well, and we'll hope that it works again today. So with that, I'd also... Mr. Angus, is this a point of order?
Yes, point of order.
Okay, what's...
Mr. Chair, it's because we've lost 45 minutes today and we may lose 15 minutes at the end. We have witnesses that have very, very important information. We have many good witnesses, but there's no other witnesses that are going to speak specifically to the issues of labor. There's many technical issues about transition that I believe only labor, probably because they deal with it all the time, are going to be able to provide to us. I feel that they're being shortchanged having lost an hour, and I would put it to the committee that afterwards we look at a way of having an opportunity to make up this hour, because this is technical information that I think will very, very much help us in being able to make credible recommendations. We'll
see how far we get through today, and as I mentioned at all of the end of the meetings, all witnesses are also invited to submit an additional written brief up to 10 pages, and then we'll look at the committee. We have an extensive list of witnesses for this study, and we'll try to get into it as quickly as we can. So, with that as the introduction, I'd like to welcome our witnesses. First of all, we have from the Alberta Federation of Labour, Gil McGowan, Blue Green Canada, Jamie Kirkpatrick, Fédération des travailleurs et travailleuses du Québec, Denis Boldak, and Patrick Rondeau. Unifor, we have Sari Sarayanen, and United Steelworkers, Roy Milne, and then appearing in person, Lionel Railton and Stephen Schumann. And so with that, we're going to get into opening statements, and I will go first to Mr. McGowan for an opening 5-minute statement. And just so everybody knows, I'll use a yellow card system to give you 30 minutes warning, a red card when the time is up. Don't stop mid-sentence, but wind up your thought, and then we'll move on to the next person. And I'd like to just quickly recognize or welcome Mr. Chambers, Mr. Shipley, Mr. Morris, Mr. Sabera, and we had somebody else, Mr. Anyway, another member joining us virtually as a substitute. So with that, Mr. McGowan, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As president of the Alberta Federation of Labour, I have the honor and privilege of representing more than 170,000 workers in every sector of the Alberta economy, including oil and gas. I also had the honor and privilege of acting as the chair of what we called the Coal Transition Coalition. The CTC, as we called it, was a coalition of unions representing most of the workers in Alberta's coal-fired power plants and associated coal mines. These were the workers who lost their jobs when the previous Alberta government announced the phase out of coal power, and when private power companies dramatically accelerated the phase out of that power because from their perspective, it made economic sense for them to do so. Together with Roy Milne from the Steelworkers, who is another guest on your panel today, we negotiated with the Alberta government for what I think remains the first and only sector-wide just transition package for workers displaced by climate policy in Canadian history. The package we negotiated provided for EI top-ups, training vouchers, relocation allowances, and pension bridging for workers. It also envisioned joint employer-employee workplace committees to address site-specific issues, and it provided money for coal communities to do some economic planning, which was important because in many cases, the coal plants and mines were the biggest employers in town. The Alberta approach to just transition in the coal sector was laudable, and I'm proud of it. But one of the reasons I'm here today is to tell you that it was no panacea, and it cannot and should not be used as a full template for the energy transition that's already unfolding in oil and gas. So why do I say this? Mostly because there are big differences between the coal sector and the oil and gas sector, differences that matter for policy. For starters, there's the simple issue of scale. There are only about 2,000 workers in Alberta affected by the coal phase out, the majority of them working in mines. In contrast, the Alberta oil and gas sector currently employs 130,000 people. That's down from 40,000 since the price of oil and gas collapsed in 2014, but it's still a much bigger number. There's also the issue of representation. Almost all of the workers in the coal-fired power sector were union members. That meant we had a structure in place for engaging with them and talking with them. In contrast, outside of oil sands related construction and downstream facilities like refineries, most workers in oil and gas are not unionized. This is problematic because engaging with workers needs to be a key part of formulating just transition policy. The unions in coal provided the infrastructure for communication, engagement, and frankly, legitimacy. Without unions in much of the oil and gas sector, talking to workers and getting them on board is going to be much, much harder. The final big difference has to do with the nature of the workforce and the nature of the transition itself. In coal, the workers were mostly full-time, permanent, long-term employees, and it was clear that they were losing their jobs because of government policy. In the oil and gas sector, on the other hand, many jobs are short-term and temporary, and it won't be clear-cut why their jobs are being lost. Is it climate policy? Is it market forces? Is it technology? The truth is, it's all of the above. And that will make it much harder to decide who should qualify for benefits. All of this means that we can't simply cut and paste what we did in the coal-fired power industry and apply it to oil and gas. It's clear to me that if we're serious about helping Canadians navigate the energy transition, in addition to talking about labor market adjustment for displaced workers, we also need to be talking about economic transformation. Band-aids won't cut it. We need to intentionally build a new economy that gives workers new opportunities to thrive. That means money, lots of it, especially for oil and gas provinces like Alberta. It means having a plan for industrial development. It means having a plan for labor force development to match the industrial plan. It means not leaving it to the market. It means channeling our inner CD Howe, if you will. And it means mobilizing like we did for World War II or the Allies did with the Marshall Plan in the aftermath of the Second World War. Anything less will be a failure to our climate aspirations and to the economic needs of our citizens and workers, and we need to rise to that challenge. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Well, we'll move right on to Mr. Kirkpatrick, and I'll turn the clock over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just first, I live and work in Treaty 6 territory in the city of Saskatoon, but I'm joining this meeting today from the unceded lands and traditional territories of the Mohawk and the Algonquin peoples, and also called as Montreal. And my organization, Blue Green Canada, was founded in 2010 by Canada's largest private sector labor unions and prominent environmental and civil society organizations to do what we're all here to do today, to advocate for working people and the environment, and to promote solutions to environmental issues that have a positive employment and economic impact. And so far, we've seen the federal government has climate plans, but it does not have plans that lay out the future of workers, particularly those working in oil and gas. And it doesn't have a future in mind for those workers that aligns to the global 1.5 degree temperature limit and our own net zero by 2050 goals. And this approach is leaving people with an uncertain future. It's crucial that the government understand and consider the impacts on workers and communities as we're acting to address climate change, because we have to plan for a well-managed and inclusive transition, and that has to be guided by those very communities and workers that are feeling the impacts. And as we work to collectively meet the challenges of climate change, we have to do so building a movement that's inclusive, that addresses the needs of Indigenous people, that addresses the needs of young people, of workers, of women, of newcomers, and even environmentalists. And we must find solutions so our economy is just, inclusive, and fair. And it's clear this has not been the approach that's understood so far. For instance, the NRCan's recent people-centered just transition discussion document, which was used to guide the consultation with Canadians. Nowhere in that document will you find the words fossil fuel, oil, natural gas. There's also no mention of retirement, security, unions, or even equity. And the goal, one of the outcomes of this process is to create an advisory body to help further government's knowledge on this topic. But as it's currently envisioned, it's not the solution. And what we've done so far is managed to divide this work across many government ministries. The experience of the task force that Mr. McGowan mentioned on the coal power, the Canadian Task Force on Transition for Coal Power Workers and Communities, was that they required interventions of ministries of labor, finance, infrastructure and community, northern affairs, innovation, science and industry, natural resources, public services, procurement, and of course, it was housed in environment and climate change. And the result was no one was given the jobs to do, and the jobs then didn't get done. And we just saw this outlined to us in great detail by the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. The key findings were that overall, NRCan and Employment and Social Development Canada were not prepared to support the just transition to a low economy for workers and communities. And although the government had identified this as a priority, NRCan began as the lead in 2019 and took no identifiable action until 2021. And frankly, federal departments and agencies have not established frameworks to measure success, to monitor the work, and to support Canadians in this transition. So some of the initial challenges are pretty clear. And again, Gil did a great job of laying it out. There's hundreds of thousands of workers in dozens of communities that have a larger than average dependence on the fossil fuel industry for their livelihoods. And the current, and I say the current, unmanaged transition to a low carbon economy is causing significant hardships for these people and for the regions. And we need our governments to give employers and workers certainty about the future. Like, are there going to be constraints on oil and gas production? Are we going to take the steps needed to get to 1.5 degrees, to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees? And are we going to be able to do so in a fair way? And workers need the government to be honest about the future of work under this new framework and this idea of net zero by 2050. But more generally, transition plans and policies shouldn't be limited just to workers who are in energy-intensive industries or who are directly or indirectly in the fossil fuel sector, because as we proceed, first of all, it's very important we do prioritize those workers, but they're not the only ones that are going to be impacted by this. Whether you're an auto worker, a teacher, a postal worker, or a healthcare worker, your workplace is going to be changed as the climate changes. And one thing I'd like to suggest is that the government consider mandating joint worker employer low carbon transition committees so that Canadian workplaces are beginning to be prepared for the changes that are coming. We have health and safety issues in every workplace, so decarbonization should also be considered an issue in every workplace and be added to that. And I'll just wrap up by saying, this would be a more effective approach than bringing out sort of more of a blanket grants for some unproven technologies and payments without conditions. So thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to go now to the Fédération des travailleurs et travailleuses du Québec. I have two panelists, Monsieur Bolduc and Monsieur Rondeau. I'm not sure which one of you is going to present, but I'll start the clock now and somebody can jump on the mic. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. My name is Denis Bolduc. I'm Secretary General of the FTQ. I'm accompanied by Mr. Patrick Rondeau. He's the Environmental Advisor for the Just Transition in-house. He's our specialist and expert. I'd like to start by thanking you for inviting us to appear before the committee to discuss fair and equitable transformation of Canada's energy sector. The FTQ is the largest labour federation in Quebec with over 600,000 members in all sectors of activity, including, of course, energy. Thousands of our members are facing issues related to climate change in that precise sector. For the past 6 years at the FTQ, we've developed honed expertise in the just transition. We understand the importance of addressing this issue in Canada, and we'd like to congratulate the government on entertaining just transition measures. We believe, however, the government is moving in the wrong direction by applying the just transition lens only to the energy sector. The FTQ recommends rather a holistic approach that includes all sectors of activity. In this regard, we deplore the fact that this file no longer appears in the Minister of the Environment's mandate letter. We are concerned that the concept of just transition is being reduced to an issue of skills training in the energy sector, and the assigned mandate letters containing just transition hint at this fear. The most recent International Panel on Climate Change report on adaptation could not be clearer. We need to decarbonise and transform our entire economy now and move away from fossil fuels. The report also indicates that we have the means to do this and that it must be done according to the just transition concept. Canada signed a number of agreements where just transition is defined, so Canada has all the parameters at its disposal to adopt a just transition plan and mechanisms. Now, obviously, I'd like to talk about the Environment and Sustainable Development Commissioner's report tabled in Parliament this week. The first observation of the report, and I quote, is that Ottawa isn't prepared to support a fair transition to a low-carbon economy for workers and communities. End of quote. The Commissioner in his report is calling on the Government of Canada's undertaking to engage in a transition to help affected workers as well as their communities by putting in place financial assistance, workforce development, and, of course, new jobs. We're concerned we need to mobilise all workplaces as well as the communities. We believe that that is the only way to ensure that no one is left behind as this just transition takes place and our economy is decarbonised. The FTQ has for some time been saying that we need adequate funding and mechanisms to arrive at good results. The European Union's Just Transition Fund is a good example of this. The Government of Canada needs to take strong leadership and have real implementation measures, such as striking joint committees on just transition in workplaces. And in the case of job losses, there are a slew of measures to support workers. It's a question of equality. The government needs to ensure that the new jobs that are created are top-notch quality jobs and that everyone will have access to them. The communities have input, of course, to make in this whole issue, and we recommend that the government adopt the Coal Sector Federation Council's recommendations to put the just transition at the heart of this initiative. We'd like to congratulate the consultative approach the government has engaged in since last summer, and, of course, the transition concept in the 2030 GHG reduction plan. Unions must be at the heart of this approach, along with workers' organisations, and that's why we find another advisory board an outdated notion. We are convinced that we are ready for more effective structure. In this regard, we recommend you study the two commissions on just transition in Scotland and Ireland, as well as the work done in Spain. And the FTQ believes that the government should put in place a structure similar to a Crown corporation. We would also encourage the government to appoint a Deputy Minister for Just Transition. Thank you for your attention.
Now going to go to our guest from Unifor, and I probably got your name horribly wrong in the introduction, so I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll start the clock for your 5 minutes. So welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Sari Saarinen, and I'm pleased on behalf of Unifor and our 315,000 members across Canada to have this opportunity to provide our input into the just transition discussions. We also want to recognize the tremendous work of the Just Transition for Canadian Coal Power Workers and Communities Task Force. Unifor was an active participant in the Just Transition Task Force, which traveled from coast to coast to hear the stories of coal power communities. We experienced firsthand the passion with which local workers and community members spoke of their plight, as well as their vision for a better future. The concept of just transition came out of Canada's labour movement and has always emphasized the need to protect workers' livelihoods and the environment at the same time. The government should therefore not shy away from the term worker. We need a worker-centered just transition. The use of the term people-centered waters down the original focus on the needs and challenges faced by workers in fossil fuel-dependent industries undergoing transition. Instead of guided the work of the Just Transition Task Force, respect for workers, unions, communities, and families, worker participation at every stage of transition, transitioning to good jobs, sustainable and healthy communities, planning for the future grounded in today's realities, nationally coherent, regionally driven, locally delivered actions, and immediate yet durable support. No question that there should be an independent body that not only provides advice to the government on just transition issues, but has a mandate to actively participate in the drafting of relevant policies and programs. Providing full transparency of the just transition continuum is fundamental to harness and foster support in society for the ambitious climate policies that are needed to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. The independent body should have significant representation from labor unions. Just transition is a worker-centered issue, and workers should be given a fair chance to represent themselves and engage in meaningful dialogue with both the government and employers. Jobs that workers transition to must be decent, well-paid, unionized jobs. The transition cannot become an avenue for employers to engage in contract flipping by another name. The changes that are displacing workers are happening now. Unifor's members in the oil and gas industry have experienced these impacts firsthand, and the fossil fuel industry is forecasted to lose anywhere between 4,000 to 8,000 jobs per year in the near future. Implementing a just transition will require dedicated funding to provide wage protections, pension bridging, retraining, relocation assistance for impacted workers. Unifor's Build Back Better campaign called for a dedicated just transition fund, partially funded through employer contributions. Impacted workers also need a single point access for services. Regional, local just transition centers must be established as soon as possible, in line with the Just Transition Task Force's recommendations. Beyond just transition, this is an opportunity for the government to address gaps in employment insurance and how the Canadian labour market adjusts to rapid technological changes, and a stronger social and economic protections combined with effective policies to help shift workers from declining industries into growth sectors would ensure that all transitions are just transitions. Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to go now to Mr. Milne. I understand that during the sound check there was a bit of a delay with some of your audio. So if we're not getting a clear transmission, I don't know if you can see me when you're giving your notes. I'll give you both cards, and if you could just pause, I'll stop the clock, and we'll let the audio catch up so the translators can stay on top of it. And hopefully this will go without any problems. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Milne, for your 5-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Poor internet connection today, so I hope I'm readable. I'm currently retired and plan on staying that way for the last couple months. It's been enjoyable. 38 years in the coal industry and have experienced the glass half full of the transition programs in place. I recall a meeting with Minister McKenna in 2016 when she described how the coal industry was going to be used as the template for the oil sands. And as has been stated already, the template is a glass half full. There were lots of holes in it. On the federal end, what we actually saw were the one-stop transition centers, which were excellent. The rest is still waiting to be seen. Probably the most important point I could add is that it's imperative that the correct department handles the transition.
We've lost Mr. Milne, so what we'll do is while we get him back in. Okay, we're at 3 minutes. Are we back in? You know what, to keep things moving, Mr. Milne, we'll have 3 minutes on the clock. I'm going to jump to our guests in the room, Mr. Railton and Mr. Schumann, and we'll start your clock at 5 minutes. And then if we're able to get Mr. Milne back, we'll finish off with his 3 minutes. So, gentlemen, whoever would like to take the floor, it's over to you. And
very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. On behalf of the 55,000 highly skilled members that make up the International Union of Operating Engineers in Canada, I'm honored to appear before the committee today to talk about such an important issue. By background, we are one of 14 affiliates of the Canadian Building Trades, representing 600,000 men and women that work in the construction sector. Our members build and maintain Canada's infrastructure. They help construct our nation's hospitals, hydro dams, mines, nuclear plants, roads, schools, solar farms, wind turbines, and pipelines, just to name a few. In short, we build it all. Discussions regarding a just transition will immediately impact our men and women, and are impacting our men and women today. For a just transition to succeed and ensure that no one is left behind, many things need to fall in place. 3 of those elements we'd like to bring before the committee today are a clear and obtainable blueprint, that labor must be an equal partner, and training must be undertaken correctly. In our industry, successful construction projects follow a blueprint or a plan, which lays out which must be done, when it must be done, and done by whom. This plan ensures that the owner, client, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, and labor all understand the timing and the steps necessary to build a successful project. In our opinion, governments must lead and clearly articulate what society must do to ensure a smooth transition. Right now, in our observation, there seems to be no blueprint, no real clear objectives, and just a lot of talk. This uncertainty creates distrust and uneasiness among those who will eventually be impacted, the workers. Clearly, there is much at stake. Past experiences have shown that when governments fail to act or when measures are unevenly implemented, workers clearly suffer from the upheaval caused by the transition. If the government wants to grow the middle class and at the same time ask Canadians to support a transition to a low-carbon economy, workers have to have the certainty and a clear view of where their future and comparable job opportunities will be for them and their families. They will need opportunities that will provide the necessary supports and reskilling initiatives that will allow them to succeed in their new jobs. Any just transition plan must be worker-centric to succeed. To understand what these opportunities are and what challenges lie ahead, actual worker voices must be heard. This transition will only succeed if we have buy-in from the workers. Organized labor must be an equal partner and therefore consulted at all levels. The government has said that just transition will be led by labor, but the government must show and commit publicly by partnering with labor on many of the upcoming initiatives. Training is one of those examples. Training will be a crucial element in moving forward on a just economy. It will only succeed if labor is engaged on how the funding and actual training of displaced and soon-to-be displaced workers is received. Retraining workers, especially those in the oil and gas sector, is vital to ensuring their success in other sectors of the economy. Outside of the university and college system, the unionized building trades, through our various training centers across Canada, are the largest private trainers in Canada. We would suggest you let the union training centers be the lead on any future training to ensure that training is undertaken correctly and best practices are applied. Our jointly trusteed, people-focused, not-for-profit training centers ensure all workers, union and non, are trained to the highest industry standards, which includes employment placement. Our programs are accredited in every province, with the exception of Quebec, which has their own provincial program. Training is provided by qualified, experienced instructors, reskilling the existing workforce, and training the next generation will take time and careful planning. Governments cannot expect workers to achieve the training necessary for new job opportunities from programs that offer quick fixes or fast-track training. Any meaningful employment opportunity will require training of sufficient duration and quality to ensure workers' success, which our centers provide. At the same time, Canada is experiencing a skills shortage. Our workforce is aging, such as myself. These are challenges, and there are many challenges in recruiting and retaining young workers. For a transition to happen smoothly, Canada must continue to encourage the recruitment and retention of oil and gas workers in the oil and gas sector. As workers are reskilled to succeed in the low carbon economy and to ensure momentum doesn't stall, we need a steady inflow of apprentices into the trades. We need to take all steps necessary to attract, train, and retain Canadian tradespeople, including the recruitment of more women and Indigenous Canadians in the trades, a made-in-Canada solution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you for your opening statements. Do we have Mr. Milne back yet? Okay, we do not have Mr. Milne, so we're going to go right into our questions and answers. And so for our guests today, we have 4 rounds of 6 minutes each. And so our first up is Mr. Bragdon. And with that, I will set the clock to 6 minutes, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our guests today and to those who are joining us via Zoom. I want to just begin with a couple of remarks, observations I've made. And I know this has been a topic that has obviously engulfed this committee right now and will be for some time into the future. And it's a very important discussion that needs to be happening. And I'm glad to have heard from some of the witnesses today speak very clearly about the importance of making sure that the workers' voices are being heard. So much time is spent in this conversation talking about ideals, concepts, hopes, aspirations, new accords, further things being signed. But Canadians and working families live in realities. This is paychecks. This is groceries on tables. This is school supplies for their children. This is the ability to provide homes and vehicle and transportation for their families. It's personal for me in a sense that I grew up in a mill worker's home. My dad worked in a mill, belonged to a union his whole entire life. He retired after 50 years of carrying one of these things, it's his bucket actually, to a mill for 51 years, worked in a resource-based industry. And a lot of discussions that are held today, many of the workers across this country that help build this country and make this country what it is feel like they're being marginalized, being talked down to, and taken for granted. And all of these workers, my dad included, and I know people from my area, we respect the environment. And we want to be good stewards of the environment. And we want to hand off to future generations a Canada that, yes, is cleaner and greener. But we also recognize the realities that our world is still largely dependent upon fossil fuels and upon a need for continuous, stable supply of energy. And what we're seeing happening geopolitically around the world right now is putting an exclamation mark on the need still for safe and reliable sources of energy supply while we transition. Canada has some of the best environmental regulations that there is in the entire world for energy extraction and use. We have a tremendous energy story to tell. We can help other economies transition to even cleaner natural fuels and fossil fuels. And yet, it seems like all the emphasis is on how quickly we can get away from Canadian energy, when I think the discussion needs to be that while the world is still largely dependent upon fossil fuels and energy, we need to make sure that it has a safe and stable supply of good, clean Canadian energy that is developed in fair and ethical ways. So I think of my dad today. I think of workers across the prairies, across Northern Ontario, all over our great country. They want to know that this committee and those who are helping to form the policies that are going to shape the next few years are hearing their voices. Now, can you assure us that are here in this committee that in all the consultations that we do, you're hearing from those average, everyday, blue-collar workers who carry the buckets and still work in their factories and are still in our energy sector? I think they really want to know that this committee is hearing their voices and concerns as well. Can any of the witnesses speak to that? That's my first. I know it was a bit of a long introduction, but I really feel I want to put that on the table because I think so many people listening in today who are concerned about their jobs and livelihoods want to know that this committee is hearing their voices. I'll maybe start with you, Mr.
A minute
Rowe.
and 45 seconds for any responses.
Thank you for the question.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the question. The answer is yes. The challenge that we are faced with as representatives of workers that work in all the sectors, and let me be clear, as we approach this particular issue with the idea that we're going to need all of the energy in Canada, which Canada can produce, because if we're going to electrify the fleets and all those things, we're going to need all that energy. The concern we have, and is what is being expressed in the union halls and the meetings that I undertake when I travel the country, is the simple fact is that there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And you've said it. It is paychecks. I want to pay my mortgage. I want to pay my bills. And as a third-generation operating engineer and a crane operator by trade, 30 years removed now, be nothing more than a hazard, and the proud father of two fourth-generation operating engineers, all worked in construction, I want to know that my grandchildren, who potentially will be fifth-generation operating engineers, will have a job, right? And as you know, I think it's really important that the committee move from the discussion stage and start getting on to the planning stage. Because as we pointed out in our submission, when you have a clear blueprint, people understand, and that eliminates the risk and the uncertainties that come along with it.
I thank you for that, and I believe you're putting your finger on something, the need for concrete plan and a plan to protect workers. Because we know, and it was the Canadian Climate Institute that stated very clearly, the sectors that are vulnerable to this transition accounts for 70% of Canada's goods exports, meaning 800,000 jobs are potentially at risk through this just transition. A transition that leaves people out of work and leaves families out of good-paying jobs is not a just transition. It's entirely unjust. We don't want to be transitioning Canadians towards poverty. We must continue to move towards prosperity and make sure that those workers' voices are being heard. And yes, we all want to be environmentally responsible and good stewards. But I'm hoping that these concerns are being addressed in all speed forward.
And with that, we're slightly over time. I know that everybody had their hand up, and but to make sure we get to all of the panelists, we're going to have to keep moving. As I say, if there are thoughts that you would like to offer after, you're invited to submit a brief. Or there may be other members here who pick up this train of thought, thinking, or you can work in your thoughts to the answers to the next question. I did miss Mr. Callaway as a guest here today. Just wanted to say hello. And we're now going to go to Mr. Maloney for his 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank all of the witnesses, first of all, but I want to thank Mr. Bragdon, too, because you hit on a theme I was going to start with. And I agree with virtually everything you said, with the exception of the part where it said we're trying to move away from Canadian energy, because I disagree with that. And I've said this at this committee before, the challenge we're trying to deal with is not production, and one of our witnesses talked about putting a cap on production, which I don't agree with. The challenge is fighting emissions. And there are a lot of words and a lot of rhetoric that gets bantied around when we're having these discussions. But we do have to look at this through a realistic lens, because if we're talking about a transition, the just part means people have to have jobs, they have to get paid, they have to be able to pay their bills, they have to have a house to live in. Now, with no disrespect to any of the witnesses' testimony today, I wrote down some of we need worker buy-in, we need decent paid, well-paid unionized jobs, we need to move to a new economy, and so on. I mean, I didn't hear anybody tell me where those new jobs are or what this training is going to be for. Because I agree, all of these people need to be retrained who are losing their jobs. I agree all of these people need to have good, high-paying jobs that last forever. But what are they? That's my first question. Because, sir, you said we need a blueprint, and you said you need to be included in the discussion. Well, that's why you're here today. So tell me what the blueprint is. Tell me where these jobs are and how we get there.
One of the, we're in our 125th anniversary of our organization, so you don't last 125 years without adjusting. The response to your question would be simple. We have footprints in both what I'd refer to as the traditional economy and the new economy. So, will a oil and gas worker be transitioned? Those skill sets are transferable into building a new nuclear plant that doesn't emit anything? The answer is yes. Will there be a requirement for reskilling in that process? Absolutely, but the basic skills that they will carry forward can be used as they move forward. With respect to the renewables, we erect most of the wind turbines in this country. We erect most of the solar farms, along with our brothers and sisters of the IBEW, and so that training is already starting to take place. What we see is the order of magnitude. The order of magnitude, if you start moving away from the oil and gas sector in a rapid pace, you're going to have to scale up the ability to do what we're doing now. And one of the things that we've been very good at over the years is understanding where the market's going to go. And we do that with our signatory partners, our contractors, and our owner clients. We do a lot of labor budgeting in meetings such as this, where we understand where the industry is going to go and what we need to do on those reskilling pieces. And so, we're already there in a lot of areas, but it's small in scale currently right now. So I see the ramping up, if you will, and like I say, addressing the order of magnitude with respect to how that's going to take place. Okay. I think that technology is already there.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I'm glad you mentioned two things I forgot to mention in my opening remarks was the nuclear. You did refer to nuclear in your paper, and I respect that, and I think almost everybody on this committee is fully supportive of that. And I also wanted to add my thanks to the oil and gas workers, because nothing that comes out of this committee should ever be viewed as an attack, because we all have a great deal of gratitude to that sector, because they've supported our economy and continue to support our economy, and will continue to support our economy in the future. So, and I'll put this question to you, but to other witnesses too. What other sectors are there? Like, what other growth areas are there? Nuclear we've identified, and we need to support that. Are there other areas that we can identify where we can, focus our retraining? What you talked about solar and wind farms. We've had witnesses talking about that too. But where are the easy targets? Where's the success? I'd like to hear from other people on this too. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Rowland. Why don't we start with you?
Okay. I mean, some of the other areas that we're looking at currently right now and discussing with our owner clients and our contractors, hydrogen development, carbon capture, ammonia development. There's a number of different areas that will allow for the transition. Produce ammonia, we need it for our fertilizers to grow our food. Then you take ammonia and you extract off the hydrogen atoms and you can burn it as a clean fuel. I think Canada can be a clear leader. SMR technology, nuclear technology, you've already referenced it, can, in our opinion, be one of those areas that you can transition a lot of the skill sets that our men and women have to build a non-emitting, safe application that can reduce the reliance on diesel fuel in the north and decarbonize, or at least lower the carbon footprint of oil sand extraction, because you can not only do you get the electricity, but you get high quality steam and heat from these reactors that can be used in lots of industrial applications.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to move over to Mr. McGowan because you referenced the new economy concept and you talked about CDAO and the need for a Marshall Plan. What would you include in your Marshall Plan? What areas would you target?
Well, before I get there, I will, but I want to address a sentiment that I heard in your questions and the previous members' comments. And there's this, I think some people are struggling, suggesting that the question that we're trying to answer at this committee and in our country is, should we transition? That's not the question. The transition is already happening. And it's happening in oil and gas. I mentioned that we have 130,000 people in my province working directly in oil and gas. That's down 40,000 from 2014. Partly that's the result of the drop in the price of oil, but it's also because the industry is not the engine of job creation that it once was, and it never will be. So, for us, the transition is already happening. The question is not if it's going to be a transition, but what kind of transition it's going to be. Is it going to be an orderly transition or a disorderly transition, or a planned transition or an unplanned transition?
Okay, what my question really was where are the jobs that are just?
And we're going to have to end here because we're over the 6 minutes, and the time goes quickly. And so I hate to cut it off here, but we're going to have to go to our next time slot, which is Monsieur Simard. So, Mr. Simard, you have 6 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the witnesses, and I'm a bit torn because I'd also like to make a long preamble like Mr. Brandon did, and I perhaps don't have my father's lunchbox with me in hand as a prop, but something is upsetting here, and I can't hide this from you. I think that decision makers need to tell the truth. It's too easy to tell people what they want to hear. You're going to keep your jobs, nothing's going to happen. That's easy to say, but that's not really helping them. And I think that public decision makers need to be accountable. History has taught us a lesson. In Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, the pulp and paper sector has faced a upheaval. We no longer send paper, and most individuals don't use paper as much anymore. The upshot is that a lot of workers have lost their jobs in the pulp and paper sector. And we've seen that occur in La Baie, in Abitibi-Bowater, a plant that is closed, and the mortality rate went through the roof. And this issue has been studied by my colleagues from the University of Quebec in Chicoutimi. The same occurred with asbestos. When the asbestos industry came to meet its end, a number of workers had to weather that storm. But we have to tell them the truth. We have to set the record straight and tell them there were no longer any job openings in the asbestos sector. We have to provide for transition members and support those workers just like we needed to do in the pulp and paper sector, which we never did. Now, if we look at the Commissioner's report that was published this week, he said that we're very ill prepared, and he gave the example of what occurred in 1992 and 1993 with the cod fishery, where Newfoundland lost in the 10 years later 10% of its population. So if that doesn't make you afraid, you have an issue. Climate change exists and it's upon us, and the only thing I need to do as a public decision maker is to tell folks who work in that sector, get prepared. I have nothing against Albertans who live off oil. On the contrary, instead of investing $14 billion in EDC, why not plan for a just transition with those public funds instead? And look, there's a report that has stated that in 2028 there'll be $72 billion invested to support the oil and gas sector. This is a bottomless pit, and the victims of this bottomless pit are workers, because the transition will inevitably occur. So it's all well and good to come here and say, well, you know, have a clip that you're going to put on social media and kowtow to workers, but it's completely irresponsible and disrespectful to workers. There are witnesses that have appeared here and have told us how to support workers with what they're doing. And we need to listen to them, ask them questions, in my opinion, as decision makers, how we can support them. But not by turning a blind eye to the reality of the matter, which is that there is climate change, because we're going down the wrong path if we do that. So sorry about this tirade, but I have a very quick question for Mr. Bolduc. In your opening remarks, sir, you referred to a Crown corporation structure that could help us through the just transition. So I'd like to hear you elaborate on that, please. Response. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Simard. Well, let me cite by way of example what has occurred abroad. Mr. Rondeau is our in-house expert on this particular issue, so he can chime in as needed. But for example, the Scottish government put in place a commission for a just transition, which, as it turns out, is mandated to provide advice on just transition plans, advice on the most appropriate approaches to address the issue and how to transform workplaces. The Scottish government, moreover, in striking this Just Transition Commission, put in place an accountability mechanism before the Parliament. So an annual report must be published. And I'd invite Mr. Rondeau, who's with me here today, to speak to this issue, because he's our in-house expert, and he can elaborate on that issue when it comes to parliamentarians. Well, thank you very much, Denis. Mr. Simard, just a couple of words before I speak to the Crown Corporation issue, and I'd like to tie this back to what the previous two members said. We represent these workers. We are doing this on their behalf. We're not saying that overnight Canada's economy needs to have a ball and chain put around its neck, but waiting and doing nothing is going to condemn them to failure. We need to take action, and Mr. Simard, I really respect what you've said. There are a slew of really bad examples of what not to do. And that is why we have come up with the idea of a Crown corporation. We were a bit taken aback that the consultative process has not really focused on what a just transition would be and what the parameters of an advisory board that would give advice to ministers, and based on that advice would take that advice into consideration and maybe act on it. But we are ready to put in place measures right off the bat, substantive measures, and that's why we've spoken about a Crown corporation. It can be something else, a commission, for example, but there needs to be some forum to achieve this, and before there's any legislation, there needs to be a consultative process that takes the input from all stakeholders. Thank you.
We'll now move to Mr. Angus for his 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for coming. And I agree with my colleagues from the Conservatives, the Liberal, and the Bloc that this should be worker-centred. So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to actually try and limit my conversation so I can hear from the workers, because I've heard all their opinions many times. Mr. McGowan, I'm going to start with you. Financial Post, January 22nd, says that the ongoing exodus of workers from oil and gas is no longer cyclical, it is structural. And that even as oil and gas is making record profits right now, they are not reinvesting in workers, and we're seeing continual drops and planned drops in the workforce. Would you say that the transition is not something theoretical, it's not ideological, it's a fact that is happening on the ground now?
The transition is underway, and it's having profound effects on Alberta communities and the Alberta labor market. As I said in my opening remarks, we've already lost about 40,000 jobs in oil and gas just in one province. And those jobs are not coming back. It started out as a response to the collapse in oil prices and the resulting drop in oil and gas related investment. But oil companies are responding to the lower price environment by automating, by reducing their costs, and as you've said, money is being piled back into the industry, partly by government, and more recently, profits. Most of our big oil sands companies are recording record profits as a result of the recent spikes in the price of oil. But they're not plowing it back into investment. They're not plowing it back into. They're using it to buy stock options and to pad their profits and pay down their debt. So, it's clear to us in the Alberta labor movement that the oil and gas sector in our province will never be the engine for job creation that it once was. And it's irresponsible for our leaders to wave their hands and suggest that we can go back to the way things were. We're used to a boom and bust cycle, but the boom and bust is over. This is a structural transformation. And so instead of talking about maintaining the status quo, we should be planning for a future that's going to look a lot different than our past.
Well, thank you for that. I come from Northern Ontario, and I've lived through a number of unjust transitions, losing every single silver mining job in a year in our community, losing the iron economy in our region in a year, 4,000 workers gone in Elliott Lake. And when those transitions happened, there was no place for those workers to go. And the training didn't begin until all the jobs were lost, and it was a disaster. No matter what they said, they hired a lot of consultants. This is a different situation. It's much more complex. There's a lot more workers, upstream, downstream construction. I'm looking, though, that right now in clean tech, there's 430,000 jobs, and Calgary Economic Development suggests there could be 639,200 jobs if, and that's a big if, government invests. The issue here is the need for this transition, that we actually put the investments on the ground so workers can transition into better paying jobs now. That would send a real clear signal to workers, to regions, to economic development. I'm concerned my Liberal colleague, who's the lead on this, doesn't know where these jobs are. That might send a pretty unsure signal to me. But Mr. McGowan, how important is it that the government starts working right now on a plan to start investing in the clean tech opportunities so we do not see that lag for workers?
Well, I think what we really need, and it's clear, is a plan. Mr. Relton talked about the uncertainty that workers are feeling, and that uncertainty is real. They know that change is happening. They know that their jobs are in jeopardy. Some have already lost their jobs. And so they, instead of just talk and hand waving and promises about maintaining the status quo when it's clearly gone, we need a plan. We need an industrial plan that is established by governments at all levels, federal, municipal, provincial, and municipal. We need funding to incent developments. And there's no shortage of opportunities, whether it's clean tech, or renewable energy or housing retrofits. I mean, there's no shortage of opportunities for job creation, but it needs a plan and it needs a push and it needs funding. And we can't wait for the private sector to do this, because if we do, it will be a disorderly transition as opposed to an orderly one, and it's workers and communities who will suffer, especially in places like Alberta, which have for so long been reliant on the oil and gas industry, which was,
I'm going to interrupt you here because
our past, but it can't be for our future.
I'm going to interrupt you here because we're going to run out of time. But I guess the issue, and I wanted to get back to your thoughts on this Marshall Plan you talk about, because I don't see us getting to net zero in any credible way with the skills of the energy sector workers. We have huge opportunity, and yet if all we have is talk and no coherent plan, we're going to see an unfolding disaster. The Environment Commissioner talked about a collapse economically, like the cod fishery. When you talk about this Marshall Plan, are you talking about an economic investment plan of taking these skills, these resources, and actually transforming the economy now rather than waiting for this transition to unfold as many of us fear it could unfold?
Yeah, exactly. And specifically, we're talking about the introduction of what we're calling a federal just transition transfer. So money from the federal government to the province, especially oil and gas provinces like Alberta, to fund a transition. That money should be earmarked for projects that will actually put people to work. And that was the problem that we had with the coal transition, is that people didn't want temporary handouts. They wanted another job. And so if we have a plan that's funded, supported by all levels of government and partnering with business, then we can do just that. We can help people move from one sector to another and open up opportunities for people in other sectors as well.
Thank you.
And with that, we're through our first round. It goes fast. And so now we go to a shorter round of questions. First up, we have for 5 minutes, Mr. McGuire.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses today for their testimony as well. Got a quick question here to start with. 1% on a real cold winter day in Alberta, 1% of the energy comes from wind and solar. So how do we define just transition? I mean, 99% has to come from somewhere else. We're not anywhere near being able to meet the needs of provinces across Canada, not just Alberta, yet. We know there's going to be transition. We know there's alternative energy sources coming. And yet the Environment Commissioner, even yesterday in their Just Transition report or audit, said that the federal government, quote, was not prepared to support a just transition to a low-carbon economy. So they're not ready yet. I'd like to ask my Union of Operating Engineer gentleman here today, just have you got specific recommendations other than increased consultation and funding, and how the federal government can better prepare workers, when adapting to these alternative energy sources?
Well, you've heard from some of the other witnesses. I think there was lots of good ideas put forward today, but some of the recommendations, clearly we have to identify. I think first and foremost, we've said this time and time again, we need a labor market analysis to clearly understand in a meaningful way what the current skill base is at this point in time. So then you would know the order of magnitude that you have to deal with and who's going to be transitioned from what. There's a patchwork of LMI information that comes forward, and there's not a comprehensive program, and the federal government, in our opinion, should undertake that, because that is a nationwide exercise. The other piece of it, as we transition to some of these other energy sources, clearly identifying what's going to fit in what region of Canada. We're currently in discussions with the province of Alberta, the province of Ontario, the province of Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick about how we can deploy nuclear fleet across the country, which would take up and provide that base load that would allow renewables to take their rightful place in our society as they evolve and grow. And unless you get that certainty of power base load that will keep people warm and keep the lights on, renewables won't have the ability to take up that space.
I appreciate your comment. I'm sorry about the time here,
Yeah.
but I appreciate your comment about the baseline being part of the plan that you're looking at having. And you mentioned nuclear. We've had some comments on that in previous meetings. How many of your members are directly or indirectly involved in the nuclear energy sector right now?
2 major projects underway right now, some of the biggest construction projects in all of Canada. The retrofit of Bruce Nuclear in Darlington. Bruce is $13 billion and Darlington is $12 billion. At some point in time, we're going to have to replace Point Lepreau in New Brunswick because it's coming to end of life. And there's a really good opportunity there for, in our opinion anyway, and our research shows that SMRs could replace that nuclear plant and also be used for some industrial
applications. There's a couple of things here I'd just like to add. Sorry for cutting you off, but time. I'm assuming your members then think that nuclear is a safe and clean energy source, and
many thousands of them go to work every day to support that industry and retrofit. Province of Ontario, 60% of the base load comes from nuclear. You turn the light switch on in the morning, guess where it's coming from?
And can you supply the committee with any data that you've got on unionization of workers in the nuclear facilities once these facilities are built? Like, there's a lot of jobs in building them, but can you just give us some data on how many?
They're 100% unionized workers.
Okay.
So
they're
the
all-
entire workforce, both in the construction and the operation of these
And in the
plants, are all
operations,
unionized workers. Yeah.
The clock here for a second. I apologize. The vote lights, the vote bells have just started. And for our witnesses, this means that we're not allowed to continue without unanimous consent of the committee members. I would suggest that it would take us just under 11 minutes to finish off this round. Are we good to go? Okay, so Larry, back to you, and we'll still aim to wind up by 5:30, but that'll get us into the bell period. And Larry, so
Thanks.
over
Do you
have a
know
minute
of any
left.
data in terms of union rates in wind and solar?
It's low. Unionized rates in wind and solar are low, and also the compensation packages in wind and solar are also low. Now, that's within our industry while we're constructing them, because we erect most of the wind turbines and solar farms. That portion of the construction is highly unionized.
Yeah.
But it's pretty simple. When you drive by a plant, be it nuclear or refinery, there's lots of cars and trucks parked out in front of it. Drive by a solar farm or drive by a wind turbine farm, and guess what? There may be one truck there, and that's a technician that's
You've hit on a
maintaining
good
it.
point.
So,
96% we've heard of the jobs in the nuclear supply chain are made in Canada, and so those jobs in the wealth stay here. Should we take into consideration supply chain challenges and energy security when providing recommendations to the government on this just transition?
I think it's in all of our best interests as Canadians to ensure that we have energy security. Clearly, the events in the world, I'm no expert on it, so I won't speak to it, but clearly the events in the world are having major impacts on our citizens in Canada, and energy security clearly should be top of mind, I would think.
That's a good point. Leads into my next one. How
Yeah,
are
no,
you?
we're out of time there. That's over the 5 minutes. So now we need to jump to Madame Lapointe. Madame Lapointe, vous avez 5.
You have 5 minutes.
My question is for Mr. Railton. In Canada, most of our natural resources are geographically situated in northern, remote, and rural areas. And given that skilled labor is presently at a crisis point in many sectors, how can we bridge local labor sources with training and employment opportunities, in your opinion?
Thank you for the question. We have a very good example of this. We represent 1,100 workers that work in a mine called the Mary River Iron Ore Mine on Baffin Island. And it's a very remote mine. It is the richest iron ore body that's currently being mined in the world. It's actually one of the greenest, believe it or not, one of the greenest iron ore mine operations in the world. And to your point of, we were very proactive with the company using our training facilities and bringing people from the north, having them trained so they could work in that mine. And we drew from the 5 communities on Baffin Island, Pond Inlet and others. And currently, of the 1,100 that are working there, 350 are from the communities of Baffin Island. We're very proud of that. We've also trained over 1,100 workers out of the north, out of the territory of Nunavut, to support their communities and build their communities, their houses, their roads, and maintain their roads. Most of it is non-union, but they saw us as the best option with respect to training their workers, because first and foremost, we had training facilities that provided dormitories where they could come and stay. A lot of these community members, it's the first time that they've been out of their community. We brought their elders to supervise them. We brought their diets. And we are very, very proud of the number of workers we have trained for the North. So we're very skilled at it, and it's a very, very proud legacy as far as we're concerned.
Thank you for that. So an equitable labor transformation through Canada's energy transformation is critically important. But I believe what's even more important should be equitable opportunities for those traditionally left out of these opportunities. So can you tell us what your organization is doing, specifically in the mining sector, I am from Sudbury, to grow the representation of Indigenous workers in Ontario who are presently underrepresented in the skilled and the red seal trades? And what do you need from government and legislators to create those opportunities?
Well, one of the other proud legacies that we point to is we believe we're playing a very important role in reconciliation. And how are we doing that? We're taking those workers. Listen, the Indigenous communities, as most of us would know, is the fastest growing and the youngest population in Canada. And we need those workers. So what are we doing? We're approaching their various different communities and explaining to them the opportunities in the construction sector and the mining sectors as to what skill sets they would require. And we are either doing one of two things. We're either bringing mobile training directly to their communities that will give them the necessary life skills that will allow them to work outside of their communities, because a lot of them have not. And the other piece of it is we're upskilling them once they've got the basic life skills to actually have a meaningful career in the mining sector or construction sector. We're well advanced in that area. In my particular case, I can point to an example in Manitoba where over 40 years of hydro generation and construction of the hydro fleet in Manitoba, my membership in Manitoba now is represented by 40%. Métis and Indigenous members that openly identify themselves. So 40% of my membership in Manitoba is a direct result of some of these applications that we've applied over a long period of time are from those Indigenous communities. So we're very proud of that legacy as well.
How much time do I have left, Chair?
Just a minute.
Sorry.
Does anybody else?
Oh, je vais la prendre.
I'll take that minute if I may.
Next, we'll go to Monsieur Simard for 2.5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question for Mr. Bolduc or Mr. Rondeau. In your presentation earlier, you intimated that a holistic approach is what is necessary, and the government was going down the wrong track by focusing solely on the energy sector. And that made me think about something that is a fact in my region, in the aluminium sector. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we're going to be producing net zero aluminium with inert matter. And we know that in the aluminium sector, what creates jobs is the need to replace anodes on a regular basis. So there's a lot of jobs required for that. And one of our concerns is that both the federal and provincial level of government fund the LEDs project in a joint fashion significantly. But there's nothing, no funding conditions to guarantee jobs. And I'm just not aware whether the FTQ, for example, has identified sectors of activity that will be able to enjoy a smooth transition, that are getting financial support from the government, but without necessarily having any job guarantees to keep those jobs. Has the FTQ studied this issue? Well, yes, thank you very much. When it comes to holistic approach, well, aluminium is a terrific example of this. You referred to inert anodes, but of course you have to manufacture them, and that means job losses because these anodes are lasting longer and longer. So we need to build the plants closer to where the aluminium factories are. Now, the fact of the matter is that this sector will be the most affected, but also sawmills, cement mills, plastic factories. We're looking at all of those sectors with the other unions, and at the FTQ we're looking at pilot projects alongside with employers to prepare a roadmap for a just transition within all workplaces. And I think that's possible. There are good examples in the European Union, for example, the UK, that have made projections on the impact of climate change broken down on each industrial sector. And that's the kind of aggregated data that we don't have in Quebec or Canada. That data would help us to predict what the impacts would be and take the necessary courses of action. So that's the kind of approach that we've adopted. If you look at the Minister of Natural Resources and Labour Department and Disabled Persons Department mandate letters on just transition, well, the proof is in the pudding. history has demonstrated that the one-size-fits-all just doesn't exist. Each work sector, each activity sector will need a tailored approach.
Now we're going to go to Mr. Angus for his final 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. I remember when we lost all the silver mining jobs in my community, and I went to visit a friend, highly skilled miner, at the retraining center, and there were 30 guys all playing solitaire on a computer. And I asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, this is how we get trained to be entrepreneurs." But if you study the reports, everyone will pat themselves on the back and say that was a good just transition. But that's how it goes down in real life. So, Ms. Saarinen, I wanted to ask you about the issue. Like, we talk about people, we talk about transition, but a worker transition that has worker focus, organized labor's presence, that the issues of training, the issues of bridging for pensions, the issues of funding for relocation for people who have to move, the need to have that written in, guaranteed as we move forward. Could you speak to the need to have that presence of labor at the table?
Absolutely. Thanks very much. And we're actually today going through that at one of our auto plants in Ingersoll, Ontario. The Cami plant, General Motors Cami plant, is shutting down. The last of the vehicles, the internal combustion engine vehicles that are being built, are just coming off the assembly line, and they will be shutting down the factory as they retool it. And then once it reopens, and hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have our first electric vehicles that will be rolling off the assembly line. How do you prepare the workers for that? There's going to be different skill sets that they were going to need as they retool, as well as not all of the workforce is going to be needed. So you're going to have a clear plan and be honest with the community, with the workforce on who is needed. How do you ensure that the ones who are able to or want to retire, that the monies are available to them, that there's bridging if needs to take place, as well as any new skills that need to take place. And so the collective agreement has to have that kind of language. So it is a bipartite agreement that needs to take place. But then it's not just those direct jobs, but it's also the parts plants that are being affected. You're not going to need all of the parts as internal combustion engine would need. Electric vehicles will need less internal parts. And so they're being affected as well, and working with those community members and those employers and workers as well is how do you have that holistic view of how is that change happening. You don't do it, this has been ongoing discussions that have taken place. You don't do it on the 11th hour. You build for it, you plan for it, so that everyone knows what is coming down the pipeline, so to speak, or what's coming down the road. So it is either that blueprint or a roadmap. You need to know, everyone has a right to know how their livelihood is being affected, and then make those appropriate changes. And if needed, having government involved with monies to ensure that there is a fair and just transition that takes place, looking after those communities.
Thank you, Chair. I know my time has run out. Can I ask about getting some written recommendations, because we have lost?
Yeah, I'll do that. To all of our witnesses, and I know. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for making yourselves available, and I apologize for the interruptions that we've had today. As I'd mentioned, you are invited to send us up to an additional 10 pages of thoughts based on the conversation or other thoughts that you have today. And if you have specific recommendations that you would like to send us for the just transition, you are invited to do that as well. I will take to the point of Mr. Angus at the beginning of the meeting. We'll see how our witness list goes for the rest of the study, and if there may be a way of bringing any or all of you back. I know all of you online. This is our first week of hybrid sessions, and the hands kept going up, and I appreciate your engagement. And it's always regrettable that the time doesn't allow us to get to each of you, because I know that you each have so much to offer to this conversation. But thank you so much for being here today.
Can I ask for some specific points?
Sure, Mr. Angus.
Because if we are bringing them back, there may be really specific things that we may not get from anyone else. So I'd like to ask to consider their recommendations that they could send us in writing that we could look at, that the concrete mechanisms that we need for training that's done by the trades, for upgrading, training and upgrading, the bridging that's necessary for older workers, that includes pensions, the community investment, the relocation services, and what plans do we have in place to help those who are on fly-in, fly-out, the contract workers who may not be covered by labor but who may be very affected, because those workers could easily fall on through the cracks. And if we have any recommendations that we could bring forward to government to say this has to be part of the plan, that would be very helpful to us.
And I would say you can go beyond those ideas or suggestions that Mr. Angus has also provided. For our members, we will be adjourning after this, and we're going to be back on Tuesday for an hour on this study, and then we'll be going into continuing in camera the draft report on emissions reduction fund. When the notice of motion goes out for that, all of the draft recommendations will be sent to you, so you'll have them. And if we can come prepared, ready to go with the discussion on recommendations. And then on the 4th, we have a panel of Indigenous representatives. I think we have 5 members lined up so far for next Wednesday. So with that, we're adjourned for today.
You indicated Tuesday? Is it Monday?
Oh.
Monday's the first meeting.
Oh, correct. Monday and Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.